Hi, I'm Doug Stevenson for Press Plus One. I'm joined by Patrick Reed for his film Fight Like Soldiers, Die Like Children. We're outside on this beautiful Toronto day. And I want to get to the film, but I want to kind of go back first, because this is the second film that you're working on with Roméo Dallaire. And I want to go back to the first one, Shake Hands with the Devil, that won the Emmy. And it's one of the first projects that you did over at White Pine Pictures. And for a lot of people, I feel like they would be pretty intimidated to take on subject matter like that. But I understand that you were actually doing some PhD studies in genocide. So did that help kind of make it a little more easy to take on?
Well, definitely. I mean, again, my background was in academia. And frankly, I just reached a stage where it wasn't that I was bored with the subject matter interested me, but I really wanted to reach a larger audience. And I remember one professor of mine say, stick with it and you could have my life. And that was kind of like, I got to get the hell out of here. Because, you go to all these conferences and you'd be in a room with 5 other people. So the great thing about film, I think, is that you can find a larger audience. And so we did this film about Roméo Dallaire and the Rwandan genocide. Again, subject matter I was interested in, but instead of 5 people or 10 people or 20 people going and seeing you talk at a conference, you'd be in rooms full of hundreds of people, and then the film was seen around the world. So film's a very powerful medium.
And obviously, like we're talking about, the new film is out now and screening at Hot Docs. And what's it like, working with a guy like Roméo Dallaire? He's obviously someone who's very knowledgeable, very passionate, but he also brings with him quite a bit of emotion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's a very, very intense guy. And going back to the region, so in the film we're making now, or we just made, Fight Like Soldiers, Die Like Children, we're going back to the same area, Central Africa, where everything happened to him in the first place. In 1994, he was the UN commander during the Rwandan genocide, and he bore witness to like 800,000 people being killed over 100 days. And since then, he's been picking up the pieces, and obviously a huge emotional and psychological toll on him. So going back to the region, it's a difficult thing, because you're a filmmaker and you want to push your subject and you want to get to the truth as much as you can in emotional moments. Yeah, and you don't want to push so hard that you make the guy crack. So it's a real kind of balancing act. And you always have to be aware of what's going on and how he is, and and a lot of that is we worked with the same crew in many cases that we did with Shake Hands with the Devil. So there was a built-in comfort level that everybody has with each other, and so there's trust there. And
I mean, we see a lot of it on the film, but there's also so much that goes on behind the scenes. Can you talk a little bit about that? Maybe what a typical shoot day was like, and also maybe just about Roméo. Did you think it was maybe a cathartic experience for him?
Yeah, I mean, a typical shoot day, I think in many cases it's a clash of cultures, because he's a real military guy. He still is a really military guy, although he's retired. And the joke on a shoot is that the director's the general. So in this case, we've got 2 generals on the shoot, and every morning before the shoot would start, he would like everybody to meet at 0700 hours and do something called morning prayers. This is a military term. It's got nothing at all to do with praying. There's a lot of swearing, and it's basically like a breakdown, an hour-by-hour breakdown of the day. Well, our documentary crews, we don't work the same way, and particularly in places we're going. So after about day 2 or 3, there was a near mutiny with my sound guy and my cameraman, because we'd be out late at night getting ready for the next day. And so then I think about day 3, I finally gave him a sheet of paper with just a big question mark on it. That's what we're going to do for the day. So he kind of tolerated us, laughed, put up with it, but really that was again, you're kind of seeing what happens as it goes, and you never know what's going to happen on the ground. So you've got to be flexible. You can have a battle plan, but you throw it out the window. So
So do you calculate everything on military time now?
I definitely do for him, and he laughs about it, and it's fun. But yeah.
And you're someone who seems to keep going back to Africa. I know you did Triage, Tsipong. Those were very well received. They were kind of more medical spin. What is it that keeps you going back?
Well, I mean, I think it's just some people are very, they like to go to a new place every time. And, Africa is a huge place. So even when you're going to different countries, it's a totally different experience. But, you develop a certain comfort level and understanding with how a place operates, and working well there. And so it's going to very, very different countries, but you're exploring similar subject matter, and ideally each film you get a little more in depth and a little more comfortable with, and you know, you just become, you know, becomes kind of your studio in many cases.
You get that comfort level where you want to go back.
For sure.
I want to talk about one more project that you did in Africa. It's called The Team.
Oh yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because it's really very interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was an unusual one, because a lot of the films I make in Africa, the main character is an outsider who goes back, often a Canadian. So The Team is a film about Kenya, and looking at a group of Kenyans who are making a TV soap opera. But the TV soap opera is not just to entertain, it's to try to deal with deep-seated issues in the country.
You know, a lot of violence that went around the election.
Exactly. So it's the idea, like a pop cultural response to, and you know, kind of a great experiment. And so the idea was kind of soap opera save a nation. And it's really kind of following a number of characters in their 20s who are extremely idealistic about the power of media and about the power of storytelling, and then kind of what happens when the rubber hits the road. It's, you know, it's not always that easy.
Yeah, very cool. You're head of documentary development over at White Pine. What's a typical day in Patrick Reed's life look like?
Oh, well, I mean, there's a balance between the films I'm looking at and working on, my own projects, and then periodically other films or ideas come in, and so it's vetting those or helping people. And in certain cases, to be completely honest, it'll be getting something in that I think there's no market for this idea, but you know, it's an interesting filmmaker and an interesting story, and so sometimes just on the side, just help them out, and because, you know, it's a hard business to break into. You know. And
you've been there for quite a while now, working with Peter Raymond. He must be somebody who brings a lot to the table. Has there been a lot that you've been able to learn from him? Has he been a mentor of yours?
Oh, no, yeah, definitely. I mean, I've worked with him on and off for about 10 years, and he's a very very senior guy, which is great. And the nice thing about our relationship right now is he's busy with a number of other things. We trust each other. And so my ideal producer, and he's become my ideal producer, is somebody that basically leaves you alone creatively, and when there's moments of desperation or difficulty, steps in. But it's very much a kind of hands-off relationship, which works really well. Yeah, I mean, there's real trust there on both sides. Nice. Yeah. And
Fight Like Soldiers, Die Like Children, we were talking a little bit before the camera was rolling. You said there was a little more information that people could find.
Yeah, so it is finishing up at Hot Docs in Toronto, but it's going to be released across Canada throughout May and June, and there's a French version as well. So if people check out White Pine Pictures' website, they can see a listing of all the times that the film will be playing in theaters in their hometowns.
Nice. And the reception's been great at Hot Docs so far?
Oh yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, Hot Docs is a great festival, and Torontonians are extremely lucky. This is the third screening here, and they've all been sold out. And yeah, I mean, Hot Docs is it's a gem, and it's, I think, a great kind of cultural landmark in Toronto. It's always nice to be part of it.
Perfectly put. Patrick Reed, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, take care.